welcome to how to be way too optimistic about how much you can get read in a readathon. Earlier this month I took part in the reader theme Readathon, and I didn't get to make a TBR video for that, but I really enjoyed taking part in it, and I will talk about all the books that I read as part of that readathon in my wrap up. This coming week I'm also taking part in two more readathons, two very important readathons, a Slowathon and Diverseathon. Alina from Marla Alina created the Slowathon, and the idea behind this readathon is to read books slowly and absorb them and properly think about them and not focus on the numbers too much. I'm planning on reading 9 books. And that runs from the 12th to the 18th of September. The Diverseathon is about reading diversely. It is about reading own voices books and reading about experiences that are different to your own and reading about people that are from different backgrounds to you. And that is running from the 12th to the 19th of September. The Diverseathon was created by Joss, Whitney, Monica and Christina, and I will leave links to all of the creators of all of the readathons that I'm talking about down in the description. I found trying to combine all the different elements of the two readathons quite challenging. I have a lot of notes. And I do feel like I've kind of compromised on both readathons. Like, there are books that I'm not reading for the Diverseathon that I would have done because I'm doing the Slowathon, and there are books that I would have read for the Slowathon that I'm not reading because I'm doing the Diverseathon. I have this big list of books that I was considering reading for the Diverseathon, and they're just the books that I thought would be manageable in a readathon. And it got me thinking that while of course the Diverseathon is a wonderful, wonderful idea, and I'm so glad that it's running, it's important to remember that reading diversely doesn't stop at the end of this week. Sure, I'm not able to fit all of the diverse books that I wanted to read into the readathon, but I can read them another time. I can read them as soon as the readathon's over. I can read them next month. I can read them next year. I also have the problem of I'm going to be moving in the middle of these readathons, and you know, for like the first half of the week I'm in my mum's house where I don't have access to all of my books. You know, some of the books that I might have picked up for these readathons, I don't have them. And for like the second half of it, I'm moving house. Anyway, I've just rambled on for ages. So the first challenge for the Slowathon is to read a book and mark it up, and for this I have decided to read Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. I think that's how you pronounce their last name. Please do correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't even hauled this one yet. I think it's gonna be in a haul in a couple days. Moving messes with filming schedules, okay? So I believe this is set in Ohio in the 1970s, and it is about a Asian American family. There are two parents, one who I believe is Asian, one who is Caucasian, and they have 3 children, and their middle child, her body shows up in a lake one day. There's a lot to do with racism in this book, but as well as that there is also features of sexism, there's explorations of sexuality, I think, there's ageism. I will leave a link to Joss's review of this book down below, and I think just seeing her copy of it will prove why it's really good for marking up a book. The next challenge for the Slowathon is to create something based on the book that you are reading. This is one of those challenges where I'm really compromising the two readathons and it's not really working. But I am reading The Tidal Zone by Sarah Moss. This is something that I need to read it this week. But I think you could certainly argue that representation of stay-at-home or single dads is something that is really lacking. We hear a lot about single mums, not so much about single dads. So yeah, this is about a stay-at-home dad named Adam who gets a phone call from his 15-year-old daughter Miriam's school to tell him that she has collapsed and stopped breathing. Of course, this has a lot to do with family and how these events affect Adam's life. And I do think this has a lot to do with sex and gender as well. I've heard fantastic things about this book, and there is kind of an overlap between the themes in this and the themes in Everything I Never Told You. So hopefully it will inspire some poetry from me. The next challenge is to do a buddy read and discuss the book through that buddy read. I don't have time to plan a buddy read, unfortunately. But I am trying to take part in Jean's Bookish Thoughts Feminist Orchestra when I can, and the book for September is I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai. I'm hoping I can get a copy of this in my library. I do have a copy of it with all of my belongings back in Wales, but it kind of means in the last 2 days of the readathon I would need to read Everything I Never Told You and I Am Malala, and I don't know if I'm going to get that done. So yeah, I think the Feminist Orchestra counts as a really big buddy read. If you don't know about Malala, she is a young woman who was shot in the face by the Taliban for campaigning for education for girls in Pakistan. This is something that I've wanted to read for a really, really long time. I am pretty familiar with Malala's story from, seeing it on the news and reading about it online, but I'd really like to read her book. So I'm really looking forward to getting to that one. Of course, it is non-fiction as well. Next challenge for the Slowathon is to read a book out loud, and for this I've chosen a poetry collection because I think it makes sense for this challenge. I have chosen Worcestershire's Teaching My Mother How to Give Birth. Worcestershire is a Kenyan-born Somali poet who is based in London, and I have heard fantastic things about this collection. I believe it has a lot to do with Islam. Yeah, I've just heard so many fantastic things, and I think it's a brilliant choice for the Diverseathon, to be honest. The next challenge is to read a book that intimidates you. You don't need to read the whole thing, you can just make a start on it. You know, the idea of an intimidating book is normally that it's quite large and quite chunky. I haven't gone for a chunky book. I've gone for quite a short book, actually. I've gone for Wait by Jeanette Winterson. I don't know if this quite fits for the Diverseathon. I think it's one of the areas of the combining the two readathons where I am compromising, because I don't think it has like a lot of diversity within it. But Jeanette Winterson is a very, very popular writer who is gay. Wait is a retelling of the myth of Atlas and Heracles, and that's the reason why this book slightly intimidates me. I mentioned in my classics tag that I haven't really read any Greek literature at all. I don't know anything about it. So I'm slightly concerned that this might go over my head because I'm not familiar with it. But Jeanette Winterson is a fantastic, fantastic writer. And if you are looking for somewhere to start with like the queer literary canon, I would highly recommend Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit. And also Written on the Body does some really interesting stuff with gender as well. The next challenge is to reread something and compare your experiences. I'm really not sure if I'm going to get this challenge done because I am going to try and prioritize reading things that I've not read about before. But if I do get time, and it is quite a short read, I may reread The Reluctant Fundamentalist by Machine Hamid. This is a really interesting book and I think it really warrants rereading. This is about a man from Lahore and a man from America. They sit down in a cafe in Lahore and the entire book is the dialogue that the man from Lahore is speaking. His name is Shanjez, and the entire book is told through the words that he's saying. The whole book is just one piece of dialogue. This is about what it's like to be a young man from Pakistan living in America and what that means for his identity and what it means to have that identity post 9/11. The reason I think this really warrants rereading is the fact that it has a very interesting ending, and I wonder how my reading of the entire book would alter knowing the ending. Well, saying knowing the ending is quite misleading. But yeah, so I may pick this up, but I may not fit it in, unfortunately. The next challenge is to read a book and review it on your platform, and for this I'm hopefully going to be reading Just Juliet by Charlotte Reagan. This is a young adult book. It is about a 17-year-old girl, and I believe she is bisexual. Always on the lookout for books with bisexual main characters. Thank you very much to the publishers for sending me this one, and thank you very much to Lauren from Lauren the Books for pointing the publishers in my direction. I believe this is Own Voices. I couldn't find that much information on the author, but I do think she identifies on the LGBT+ spectrum. I should mention, if you don't know what Own Voices is, this is to do with making sure that the writers who are writing about diverse experiences identify as part of that demographic. So reading about trans issues from trans writers, reading about issues that people of colour have from people who are of colour. I will leave Joss's video on Own Voices linked down below because she explains it in a much more articulate and useful manner than I do. And the final challenge for the Slowathon is to read a book and read a secondary literature on it. And for this I have chosen Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I've been reading through this one very slowly for quite a while now, and I am hoping to read it just as slow over the readathon, like really absorb it, and then hopefully do a little bit of critical reading around it as well. This predominantly follows the lives of two people who fell in love when they were teenagers and what it is like to be Nigerian, what it's like to be Nigerian in America and be Nigerian in Britain. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is kind of often hailed as like the writer you need to read to understand the Black experience or the Nigerian experience, and that's problematic because there isn't this just like one universal experience. I mean, I can't speak about the Nigerian experience, but you know, there's not just one LGBT experience, you know, we have very different experiences in life, and that applies to lots of different things as well. You know, there isn't just this one book that you can read that will tell you everything. That's not how it works. You know, that's why it's so important to keep reading diversely. You can't just like check it off like, okay, I read a book with an Asian in it now, that's that done. I understand that's not how it works. There are a couple more books that I'm really hoping to get to for the Diverseathon, and one of those is If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo. This is a brilliant example of what Own Voices is. This is a young adult book, and it is about what it's like to be a trans woman, and it is written by a trans woman, and I think on the American cover the cover model is a trans woman. I'm also hoping to get to Stum by Jem Lester because it features a autistic kid in it. So across this readathon I am reading about and books by writers who have different sexualities than me, different religions, different ethnicities. But as I keep saying, it doesn't stop after this week. It doesn't. This list of books where I couldn't fit all of the books in that I wanted to read, I need to read this list, you know? I didn't get to Ruby by Cynthia Bod, I didn't get to Sophia Khan Is Not Obliged by Aisha Malik, I didn't get to Aristotle and Dante Discovered the Secrets of the Universe, I didn't get to In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park, I didn't get to On Beauty by Zadie Smith. So that is my TBR for the Diverseathon and the Slowathon. I didn't manage to fit in any books about or by people with physical disabilities or deformities, so if you have any recommendations for books like that, do leave them down in the comments and I will add them to my TBR. I'm really looking forward to taking part in these readathons, and all of the hosts and creators will be in the description, as I said, and I hope everyone has a really great positive experience taking part in these readathons.